Tension permeated the courtroom, making every cough and shuffle echo off the polished wood and marble. Marcus Bell sat straight at the plaintiff's table, his dark suit spotless, and his expression was hard to read. He had been in courtrooms like this all his life, but never as the man on trial. The older white judge presided from the bench, his gavel resting in his hand like a threat, and he had a reputation for siding with law enforcement. Two uniformed police officers sat with their attorney on the opposite side of the room, whispering and glancing at Marcus with a mix of smugness and unease. The gallery was packed. Reporters, activists, curious citizens, and a few off-duty cops, all waiting to see how this would play out. The case had started with a traffic stop, one that should have been routine but had spiraled into something ugly. Marcus had been pulled over late one night, accused of a minor infraction, but the encounter had escalated quickly. The officers claimed he was belligerent, that he resisted, that he threatened them. Marcus, calm and measured, had insisted on his rights, but their report painted him as a threat. He had filed a complaint, and when the department cleared the officers of wrongdoing, he had taken the matter to court. Now, as the proceedings began, the judge's impatience was clear. He cut off Marcus's attorney, allowed the officer's attorney to freely object, and appeared to take the police's every word as gospel. The officers were the first to testify, and their accounts were practiced and consistent. They described Marcus as aggressive, uncooperative, and suspicious. The judge nodded along, his question soft, his tone almost sympathetic. When it was Marcus's turn, the judge's demeanor shifted. He interrupted, pressed him on minor details, and seemed to doubt every answer. Marcus's attorney objected, but the judge overruled him, his bias barely concealed. The officer's lawyer's presentation of grainy, incomplete dashcam footage that cast doubt on Marcus's account of events marked the turning point. The judge leaned back, his mind seemingly made up. "Mr. Bell, is there anything else you'd like to add before I make my ruling?" His voice was heavy with determination as he asked. Marcus looked around the courtroom, at the faces watching him, at the officers who had lied, at the judge who had already decided. He reached into his briefcase, pulled out a leather wallet, and flipped it open to reveal a gold badge. The room went silent. "Your Honor, I think it's important that you know who I am before you rule. My name is Marcus Bell. I am a United States attorney, appointed by the Department of Justice. I have spent my career prosecuting cases of civil rights violations and police misconduct. I am not just a black man pulled over on the side of the road. I am the man who will make sure this court and this city answers for what happened to me." The judge's face drained of color, his hand trembling as he reached for his gavel. The officer's attorney sputtered, trying to object, but the gallery erupted in whispers and gasps. Marcus's voice was calm, but every word landed like a hammer. "I have already filed a formal complaint with the DOJ. I have the full support of the United States government, and I have evidence, real evidence, that was not presented here today. I suggest, Your Honor, that you reconsider your position before this becomes a matter for federal court." The judge stared at Marcus, his authority suddenly fragile, the balance of power in the room shifting in an instant. The officers looked at each other, their confidence crumbling. Marcus sat back, his badge on the table, his eyes never leaving the judge's. The silence stretched, heavy and electric, as everyone waited to see what would happen next. The judge seemed frozen for a long time, his gavel in the air like he could stop time. Every eye was on Marcus and the badge that shone in the fluorescent light, and the courtroom, one so certain of its outcome, felt unmoored. The officer's attorney tried to regain control, his voice cracking as he objected to what he called grandstanding, but the judge waved him off, his own composure slipping. "Mr. Bell, are you telling this court you withheld your identity as a federal prosecutor until now?" The judge asked, his tone a mix of accusation and fear. Marcus met his gaze, unflinching. "I am stating to this court that I desire to be treated in the same manner as any other citizen. I wanted to see if justice here was truly blind. I think we all have our answer." A ripple of murmurs swept through the gallery, some people nodding, others shaking their heads in disbelief. The judge cleared his throat, his voice suddenly brittle. "You say you have evidence that was not presented?" After giving a nod, Marcus moved a flash drive across the table. Film from the body camera, Your Honor, the officer's own words and deeds, as well as everything that transpired that evening. The department claimed the footage was lost, but I obtained a copy through federal subpoena. I suggest you review it before making any ruling." The judge hesitated, then gestured for the bailiff to retrieve the drive. The courtroom's big screen flickered to life, and the footage began to play. The room watched in silence as the video showed Marcus's calm demeanor, his clear request for a supervisor, the officer's escalating aggression, and the moment they pulled him from his car without cause. The audio was damning, one officer muttering about teaching him a lesson, the other laughing as they tightened the cuffs. The gallery gasped, the officer's attorney burying his face in his hands. The judge's jaw clenched, his knuckles white as he gripped the bench. When the video ended, the silence was deafening. Marcus spoke again, his voice steady. "This is about more than just me. It's about every person who has ever been denied justice because of who they are. It concerns a system that safeguards its own interests at the expense of the truth." The judge looked down, his authority crumbling. "Mr. Bell, I didn't know about this evidence. I assure you, this court takes these matters seriously." Marcus didn't flinch. "With respect, Your Honor, assurances are no longer required. The time for accountability is now." With a pale expression, the judge nodded. "I will be referring this case for further investigation to the State Attorney General and the Department of Justice. The officers involved are hereby suspended pending the outcome of that investigation. This court will also be reviewing its own procedures to ensure this never happens again." The gallery erupted in applause, some people standing, others wiping away tears. The officers sat in stunned silence, their careers unraveling before their eyes. Marcus stood to leave with his belongings and his badge still on the table. As he walked past the officers, he paused, his voice low but clear. "You thought you could bend the truth to fit your story, but the truth has a way of coming out." He turned to the judge, his gaze unwavering. "Justice is not a privilege. It is a privilege, and I will make sure it is protected." The judge nodded, chastened, his earlier arrogance gone. Marcus was met by a flurry of reporters as he left the courtroom, their cameras flashing and questions flying. He paused on the courthouse steps, the sun warm on his face, and spoke to the crowd. Today was not just about one man's fight. It was about the worldwide struggle for justice. We must hold our institutions accountable, demand transparency, and never accept less than the truth. The crowd cheered, the moment captured for the evening news, a symbol of hope and change. That day had repercussions that extended far beyond the confines of the courthouse. Across the nation, conversations erupted in city halls, police stations, and living rooms as the shocking reversal and the officer's misconduct were made public. His story served as a rallying cry for those who had long felt powerless against a system that was stacked against them. Marcus Bell's name became synonymous with courage and integrity. In an effort to spread his message and advocate for broader reforms, civil rights organizations reached out. A formal investigation into the police department's practices was launched by the Department of Justice, which sent federal agents to review case files, interview witnesses, and audit the handling of evidence. The city's mayor, under mounting public pressure, called a press conference to address the scandal. She made bold promises in front of a sea of reporters, promising mandatory use of body cameras, independent oversight of police behavior, and new training programs centered on de-escalation and bias awareness. The officers involved in the case were placed on administrative leave, and their badges and guns were turned over until a federal investigation was finished. The judge who had so clearly favored law enforcement in the beginning now faced his own reckoning. The state's Judicial Review Board opened an ethics investigation, examining not only his handling of Marcus's case, but also his record in similar cases over the years. Editorials in a local paper called for his resignation, and activists organized rallies demanding accountability at every level of the justice system. Marcus maintained his composure throughout the ordeal, refusing to become swept up in the praise or the drama. He returned to his office at the U.S. Attorney's office, his colleagues greeting him with a mixture of pride and relief. He knew the fight was far from over. There were still cases to prosecute, still wrongs to right, still a system in need of reform. But he also knew that his actions had made a difference, that he had forced a city, and perhaps a nation, to confront uncomfortable truths. Marcus received invitations to speak at universities, community forums, and police academies in the weeks that followed. He shared his story not as a tale of personal triumph, but as a call to action. He stated to the audience, "Justice is not automatic. It requires vigilance, courage, and a willingness to challenge the status quo. We must all be willing to stand up even when it's hard, even when we stand alone." His words rang true, inspiring others to share their own experiences and demand better from those in authority. New laws were approved by the city council to make law enforcement more open and accountable. The police department, under new leadership, began to rebuild its relationship with the community, holding listening sessions and inviting residents to participate in policy discussions. The judge, facing mounting criticism, announced his retirement, paving the way for a new era of judicial leadership. The journey was both exhausting and thrilling for Marcus. He received letters from people across the country, some thanking him, others sharing their own experiences of injustice. He said the same thing to as many of them as he could. "You are not alone. Your voice matters. Keep fighting." At home, Marcus found solace in the quiet moments with his family, the laughter of his children, the steady support of his wife. He was aware that the work he had done was significant, but he was also aware that the most significant battles were those that were waged on a daily basis, whether in classrooms, courtrooms, or at the dinner table. As the city slowly healed, Marcus remained a steadfast advocate for justice, his resolve unshaken, his commitment unwavering. The story of the day he revealed his badge in court became legend, a reminder that sometimes the truth is all it takes to change the world. Months passed, and the city's landscape began to reflect the changes sparked by Marcus Bell's stand in court. The police department, once a fortress of silence and denial, now opened its doors to community review boards, inviting citizens to observe, question, and participate in the shaping of new policies. Officers participated in workshops on cultural competency and implicit bias, and the department's leadership was reorganized with the appointment of a new chief from outside the established ranks. The judge's retirement led to the appointment of a younger, more progressive jurist, one who made it clear from the start that justice would be blind to color, status, or uniform. Marcus continued his work as a U.S. attorney, but his days were now filled with invitations to speak at national conferences, to consult on police reform initiatives, and to mentor young lawyers determined to follow in his footsteps. He never let the attention distract him from his mission. Every case he prosecuted, every policy he helped shape, was guided by the memory of that day in court, the day he refused to be silenced, the day he forced the system to see him not as a stereotype, but as a man, a professional, and a champion for justice. His pride in his family remained his anchor and a constant source of strength. His children, once too young to understand the weight of his work, now ask questions about fairness and right and wrong. Their curiosity is a sign that the next generation would be even more determined to build a better world. The city, too, began to heal. Community events brought together residents and officers, fostering conversations that were sometimes difficult but always honest. The mural that appeared on the wall of the courthouse depicted Marcus with his badge held high and the words "truth" surrounding him. Justice, change, painted boldly above. Rallies, vigils, and celebrations gathered there, making it a symbol of what was possible when one person stood up for what was right. Marcus often visited the mural in the quiet hours before dawn, reflecting on how far they had come and how much work remained. He knew that progress was never linear, that setbacks would come, that the fight for justice was ongoing. But he also knew that courage spreads and that integrity inspires others to act in the same way. The city held a public forum on the anniversary of his courtroom confession, inviting residents to share their experiences and hopes for the future. Marcus spoke last, his words measured and powerful. Justice is not a destination, but a journey. It is the work of a lifetime, the responsibility of us all. We must never give up, never give in to the easy solution, and never stop demanding the truth. Because when we do, we honor not just ourselves, but everyone who came before us and everyone who will come after. The crowd rose in a standing ovation, the applause echoing through the city's heart. As the sun set, Marcus walked home with his family, his heart full, his spirit at peace. He was aware that the story of that day in court would continue to be told, not as a story about how one man won, but rather as a reminder of the power of truth, the need for bravery, and the promise of justice for everyone.